Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings MLB video for Tuesday, June 7th. It's a it's actually a 15-game slate, but there is a little bit of an issue. I want to make sure I let everybody know about this up front. The Mets and Pirates game got moved up to 4 o'clock today, so it's not going to be included in most of the slates. I had emailed back and forth with the sites this morning to make sure on this, so just be careful if you're using these guys. From what I hear, you're going to get a 0 if you use them because the game starts at 4 o'clock. It was supposed to be a 7 o'clock start, but now they have a doubleheader. So the game starts at 4. The stats are not going to count because the games actually go off at 7 o'clock. There's no early slate today. So if you're looking at anybody in that Mets-Pirates game, get them out of your lineup now and use guys in the other 14 games that we have because you don't want to wind up with a bunch of zeros. First game we're going to start with today, like I said, big 14-game slate, so we're going to get right into it. First game, Chicago Cubs at the Philadelphia Phillies. Kyle Hendricks is on the mound. Pretty solid matchup for him. He actually dominated this Phillies team last week. So there's really two schools of thought here. One of them is, well, he dominated them last week. He'll do it again this week, which, is an okay line of reasoning. You know that the Phillies aren't a great offense. The other school of thought is it's a lot tougher for a pitcher the second time he sees a team like in quick succession. We've seen a lot of times, and I know Josh Kalachi's done a lot of work on this, about how when a team sees somebody twice in a short period of time, they usually do a lot better against them the second time. So, like I said, he pitched great against them last time. I think he wound up with like 30 fantasy points, just absolutely dominated this weak offense. But again, there is a little bit of merit to looking at it the other way, that they're going to see him twice in the week and they're probably going to do better against them this time. The only bat that really stands out for me on the Phillies right now, Odubel Herrera, left-handed guy to go up against Hendricks. 359 WOBA for him, only like a 134 ISO, not a lot of power, but he does lead off. He can get on base, get a couple hits for you, maybe pick up a stolen base or score a run. So I think he's a guy that's a viable option to take a look at. I'm not really looking to take a lot of bats against Hendricks, and I actually think he's a pretty sneaky pitching option. On the other side of this game, not a big fan of Jared Eichhoff. I think that he had a couple good starts at the beginning of the year, and people kind of overrated him. He's he's not one of the stud pitchers on this Phillies team. They have a bunch of good young guys like Nola and Vincent Velasquez. Eichhoff is not one of them. Left-handed bats are the way to go against them. They're hitting over 300 against them in 2016. I think this is a great spot for Anthony Rizzo. 391 WOBA, 264 ISO for him. I guess you can look at a guy like Jason Hayward, who homered yesterday too, another left-handed bat. Zobrist has been banged up, so he's probably out of the lineup here. I also like Chris Bryant, righty on righty, 380 WOBA, 216 ISO score. He is locked in at the plate. I actually tweeted out yesterday, in his first at bat, he hit like a 450-foot foul ball that, was down the line and just missed the foul pole. Went into the upper decks, though, absolutely crushed it. Came back later on in that bat and hit almost a home run. He wound up with a double, or I think it was fan interference. He actually wound up with a triple, got a double out of it. Basically, there's a little fence on top of the wall in Philly, and he hit the fence twice yesterday. So if that little fence wasn't there, he would have had 2 home runs. He basically hit the ball about as far as you can hit it without it being a home run twice yesterday, wound up with 2 doubles on it. So, like I said, Bryant's about as locked in as any hitter can be right now. Definitely somebody I would look at here. Philly's a good hitter's ballpark. I think this Cubs team is going to put up a lot of runs. If you want to even look at some of those other guys down the line and stack them up, I wouldn't be opposed to that today, although it's probably going to be a pretty popular option. Next game we can talk about, Kansas City at Baltimore. Yordano Ventura pitching for Kansas City, and he hasn't been good this year. And, it's not a surprise why he hasn't been good. He's walking way too many guys, and he's giving up way too many home runs. 61 innings pitched. He has 35 base on balls allowed this year, and he's given up 8 home runs. If you're walking guys and then getting tagged for home runs, that's when you get tagged for like 2-run and 3-run shots. You get tagged for 2 of those in the game. Next thing you know, you're down 5 or 6 runs. So, Ventura is somebody who's been pretty even to both right and left-handed bats. So, like I said, about a 250, 260 average, right-handed and left-handed bats hitting home runs off him. And like I said, this guy's having control problems right now. He's not able to get guys out, walking way too many batters. So I do think that Baltimore is going to put up some runs. I would probably look for the guys with some home run power. Maybe a guy like Chris Davis, 395 WOBA, 318 ISO, left-handed power bat against a right-handed pitcher. You can look at a guy like Manny Machado, 391 WOBA, 255 ISO score for him. So he's another guy that you can look at with some home run power. And then you also have Kim, the rookie that they brought over from the Orient. This is a guy with a 419 WOBA and limited at bats this season, so I definitely think he's somebody that's viable. Going to be hitting in the 2-hole for them again today. On the other side of this game, we got Ubaldo Jimenez, right-handed bats, reverse split kind of guy last 3 years. 2016, right-handed bats are actually hitting over 300 against them this year. The guy who stands out the most to me is Lorenzo Cain, big right-handed bat on that Kansas City Royals team. He's 8 of 17 lifetime already against Ubaldo with a home run, so I think he's definitely in play. You can also look at a guy like Eric Hosmer. Hosmer was 3,400 yesterday. I think he's over $5,000 today, like 54 or 55. Just the most ridiculous jump in price in one day I've ever seen. 390 WOBA, 198 ISO for him. 10 of 29 lifetime with 2 home runs against Ubaldo Jimenez. So he's another guy that profiles well and has hit Ubaldo well in the past. So I don't see this being a good game for Jimenez. Next game we can talk about, we got the Angels against the Yankees. Michael Pineda on the mound for the Yankees. He's been getting hit hard this year. Both left and right-handed bats have an average over 310. Normally, right-handed bats have a higher average and more home runs against them. Kind of a reverse splits guy the last couple of years. Mike Trout's the one guy who really stands out to me on this Angels team. I mean, 413 WOBA, 286 ISO, arguably one of the best players in baseball, and hits really well in righty on righty matchups or righty on lefty matchups, or however else you want to do it. Trout, definitely one of the top options today. Somebody that if I can afford him, I'm going to have him in a lot of my lineups. On the other side of this game, we got David Huff, the rookie coming up from AAA to pitch for the Angels. Right-handed bats, higher average, more home runs against them. He is a left-handed pitcher. The Yankees aren't all that great against lefties. I mean, maybe you can look at a guy like A-Rod. He's got the best numbers, 380 WOBA, 271 ISO. He seems like a 1-for-4 kind of guy for me at this point in his career. He'll square up one pitch a game, and the other 3 times he'll strike out or ground out and just not look all that great at the plate. So if that's something that's interesting to you, by all means use A-Rod tonight. Carlos Beltran, probably my favorite player. Best hitter that the Yankees have right now against left-handed pitching. Switch hitter, can hit from both sides of the plate. Should be in the 3-hole today. He's somebody you can consider. And then Starlin Castro, especially if he hits up in the 2 spot or even in the 5 spot, if they leave him up there, I don't hate that either. Another guy that hits left-handed pitching pretty well. Again, Huff is a rookie, AAA guy that they're pulling up, so I do think the Yankees are going to be able to get to him. Next game we can look at St. Louis at Cincinnati. Mike Leake on the mound for St. Louis. Revenge game for him. Left-handed bats have a higher average against them, more home runs over the last 3 years. So guys like Joey Votto, I think, are in play. 394 WOBA, 177 ISO. You can look at a guy like Jay Bruce if you're looking for some home run upside. Again, he strikes out a little bit too much and makes a few bad outs every game, but he does have the power to jack one out of there if Leake makes a mistake, which he's been known to do. You could also even look at a guy like Billy Hamilton. If Billy Hamilton's up in the 2-hole, I kind of like him as a guy that can get on base and steal a couple bases for you. I mean, everybody looks for the guys that can hit home runs, but if you get a guy who's pretty cheap that can hit a single or walk, steal second base, and score a run, you're getting 10 fantasy points and 1 at-bat out of that guy. So if he's under $4,000, that's pretty good value that they can return in, in 1 at-bat, basically. And there's nothing that says they can't do that twice in a game or, have an RBI double or, every once in a while Hamilton even gets into one for a home run. There's a lot of ways for him to score fantasy points. So if he's up in the order where he's going to get a few more at-bats, I wouldn't be opposed to using Billy Hamilton either today. On the other side of this game, John Lamb, one of the worst pitchers we have on the mound. Left-handed pitcher, absolutely horrible numbers this year. Right-handed bats hitting over 300. Left-handed bats okay against them too. Really like Stephen Piscotty. 442 WOBA, 224 ISO score against left-handed pitching. Guy's been hitting some big home runs lately. He's hitting right in the middle of that order. Piscotty, definitely my favorite play today on the St. Louis Cardinals. I also think you can look at a guy like Yadier. Yadier Molina, a catcher option. He hits left-handed pitching pretty well. There aren't a lot of options at catcher today. There are a few decent ones that we'll get into, but Yadier, definitely somebody that would make my short list there. This whole lineup is really in play to me. You got a bad starting pitcher, even though that St. Louis doesn't really kill left-handed pitching. You got a bad starting pitcher on the mound that's starting, guy who's probably not going to go deep into the game. Then you have a bad bullpen that's going to come in when they do finally knock him out of the game sometime in the 5th or 6th inning. And it's a really good park bump for this St. Louis team, too. Cincinnati, one of the easiest, the easiest park in the majors to hit home runs out of. So I think that there's a lot going in this Cardinals order. Even some of the guys who don't make sense, like a Carpenter or a Matt Adams to start right off the bat, I think by the 5th or 6th inning, they're going to get 2 or 3 at-bats against the bullpen, a very bad bullpen that's mostly right-handed. So I think you're still going to get some good at-bats out of these guys. If they can get a walk or a hit against the lefty their first time up, they're going to get 2 or 3 chances to hit against a righty and really do some damage. So I think you can stack up this whole St. Louis team. I expect a lot of runs out of them and a couple home runs in this ballpark. Next game, we can talk about Toronto at Detroit. Matt Boyd, the lefty on the mound for Detroit. And this is kind of a tough spot for the young lefty. This Toronto team hasn't been as great against left-handed pitching, but you look at their profiles, and these are all guys that can hit left-handed pitching pretty well. Joey Bautista, 365, 231. Excuse me. Josh Donaldson mashes lefties, 429 WOBA, 310 ISO for him. Encarnacion, 382, 255. Michael Saunders hits lefties well. You got Devon Travis back in there now, and Russ Martin. These guys hit left-handed pitching well. So there's a lot of guys that you can use here against these left-handed pitchers. On the other side of this game, we got Aaron Sanchez, and Sanchez is a guy who's really tough on right-handed bats, but left-handed bats have been teeing off on him. Against Detroit, though, I think it's a pretty good spot because we don't have any left-handed bats on Detroit. Now, the righties they have do hit right-handed pitching well. Guys like Miguel Cabrera, J.D. Martinez, the switch hitter Victor Martinez. These guys can all hit a righty. So those would be the 3 that I looked at. But like I said, I think it's going to be a little bit of a tough spot here for Detroit because they don't have a lot of guys that do hit, right-handed pitching well. I mean, they don't have a lot of left-handers on this team, if any at all, that they're going to be playing. And Sanchez is tough on righties, so I don't think it's going to be an easy game for him. The next game we can talk about, we got Houston at Texas. Cole Hamels, the lefty, is on the mound for Texas. Right-handed bats hitting about 260 against them with a home run every 5 innings or so. There's a lot of guys on Houston that do very well against left-handed pitching. I mean, Jose Altuve, probably one of the best bats in the entire league against left-handed pitchers. 431 WOBA for him, 193 ISO score. This is a guy who hit over 400 2 years ago against left-handed pitching. Has a 400 WOBA each of the last 3 years against lefties. So definitely somebody I think we should look at. George Springer, over 400 WOBA, 240 ISO against left-handed pitching. Even Carlos Correa, who's starting to break out of the slump that he's been in. 360 WOBA, big 223 ISO against lefties. So, the big bats at the top of that order for Houston, I think, are all in play, even though it's a tough matchup here with Cole Hamels. On the other side of this game, we got Dallas Keuchel, the lefty, and he's really been struggling in 2016. Right-handed bats definitely doing a lot better against them, probably the way I want to attack them. Jurickson Profar still pretty cheap, probably still leading off. We talked about it yesterday. I think it's like 9 of 10 games right now. This guy has multiple hits, putting up double-digit fantasy points almost on a regular basis. Very solid cash game play. Is basically a lock for like 10 fantasy points a night recently. As long as he stays on top of that order in a pretty good matchup against the lefty, I think he's going to be somebody else that we can definitely look at here today. Adrian Beltre, another guy I really like against lefties, 391 WOBA for him, 229 ISO, hits left-handed pitching very well. And then even Ian Desmond, who's been hitting in the 2-hole. About a 360 WOBA for him, 193 ISO, does have a little bit of pop. He is another guy I think you can look at against left-handed pitching. Next game we'll talk about, we got Miami going up against Minnesota. Adam Conley on the mound from Miami. Conley's been actually tough on left-handed bats. He's a left-handed pitcher. Right-handed bats hitting about 240, 250 against him the last 2 years. He does have a high fly ball rate, which is not a good thing with him moving from Miami to Minnesota. A lot easier to hit home runs in Minnesota than it is to hit in Miami. And Minnesota is actually kind of a sneaky hitter's park. There's a lot of right-handed bats in this team that they can throw at him. None of them really have great numbers on the Twins. I think the best WOBAs that you find on the team, guys like Park, Dozier, and Plouffe, all have about 340 WOBA against left-handed pitching, which isn't really all that great. It's good, but it's not really all that great. Those aren't like elite numbers or anything that's going to scare me off of using them. Like I said, the problem is there are a lot of right-handed bats, so there really are no easy spots for Conley to kind of go after some of these lefties because they probably will only have maybe one lefty and Joe Mauer, or maybe another one towards the bottom of the order. So maybe 2 lefties at most in this lineup here today. These right-handed bats could make it a little bit tough on them. On the other side of this game, we got another lefty on the mound, and the young Pat Dean for Minnesota. Right-handed bats have a higher average against him. Again, it's limited innings. He hasn't pitched that many innings in the majors. Miami has some guys that have been smashing left-handed pitching, though. I mean, Giancarlo Stanton, 445 WOBA, 449 ISO score, which is just ridiculous. I know it's in limited innings because he missed a lot of last season, but this is a guy that absolutely owns left-handed pitching. And another guy who owns left-handed pitching is another outfielder that they have. Marcell Ozuna has been amazing this year against lefties. 439 WOBA, 252 ISO since the start of last season, just absolutely mashing the ball. I mean, when Stanton was out, he was the guy that was mashing lefties and made you forget that Stanton was even somebody who wasn't playing at the moment. Next game we can talk about, we got Oakland at Minnesota. Zach Davies is on the mound Oakland at Milwaukee. Zach Davies on the mound for Milwaukee at Miller Park. He threw a gem last time out against the St. Louis Cardinals, which burned a lot of people because there were a lot of Cardinal stacks that day. But I think that game was more of an aberration and something that we should expect. I mean, the rest of his starts, he's kind of struggled. Left-handed bat's the way to go after him. They have a higher average, more home runs, and a very high fly ball rate, which can translate into home runs, especially in a stadium like Milwaukee at Miller Park. There aren't a lot of lefties on this Oakland team that you got to worry about, though. I mean, you'll probably get Stephen Vogt in the 3-hole, so he's a catcher batting up towards the top of the order, somebody who's definitely in play. Besides him, though, the next two bats against right-handed pitching are Danny Valencia and Chris Davies, who are both righty. Both of them have been very good this year in righty-on-righty situations. You know, Valencia, since coming over to Oakland, has kind of proven to everybody that he can hit righties, and Davis is a really good power bat in righty-on-righty spots. So I still think I'm looking at both of them. They both have some power. The game's in Miller Park, good place to hit. So I think those would be the three guys on Oakland I'd be looking at. On the other side of this game, we got the rookie, Sean Manaea. Left-handed pitcher, right-handed bats have been better against him in limited innings. You know, this is a big prospect, this kid, but so far he hasn't looked all that great. There are a lot of right-handed bats that hit left-handed pitching well on this Milwaukee team, especially now that they're healthy. Domingo Santana up there towards the top of the order. He's got some power, some speed, 425 WOBA, 235 ISO in his limited innings. Ryan Braun always hits lefties well, 421 WOBA, 241 ISO. And then Jonathan Villar, who's been awesome lately, 393 WOBA, 184 ISO. I think all three of those guys are definitely people I want to have some exposure to. And then you can even use a catcher like Lou Croy or a first baseman like Chris Carter as well to round it out. All these guys hit left-handed pitching well. So I think all these guys are going to be guys that are in play. Next game we can look at, we got Washington going up against the Chicago White Sox. Joe Ross is on the mound for the Nationals. He's very tough on right-handed bats, left-handed bats the way you want to attack him. Not really a lot of left-handed bats on the Chicago White Sox that stand out. I mean, the best one and the guy who's probably in the best spot is Adam Eaton. About a 360 WOBA for Adam Eaton. You know, the rest of this lineup is very right-handed heavy. They do have a guy in Abreu who's been good in righty-on-righty situations, but this hasn't been Abreu's best season. And on top of that, like I said, you know, Ross is tough on right-handed batters, so it's not like it's going to be an easy matchup for Abreu anyway. Other than Eaton, I really don't think there's any bats on Chicago White Sox that I even want to consider taking. On the other side of this game, we got Matt Latos pitching, and a little bit of a reverse splits guy. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them, but left-handed bats do okay too. So I think you can look at guys from both sides of the plate. I actually like the lefties here a little more. Against right-handed pitching, the two guys that always stand out to me on the Nationals, you got Bryce Harper, 457 WOBA, 337 ISO, one of the best players in baseball. You know, I mean, if you can fit him in your lineup, it makes sense to do so. Just remember, teams have not been pitching to him that much lately, so it kind of caps his upside a little bit. I still love him as a cash game play. He's going to pick up, 2 walks this game, maybe get you a stolen base, maybe get you a run scored, but he's probably only going to have 1, maybe 2 at-bats where they even try to pitch to him at all, so just keep that in mind. With that in mind, though, that is the other reason why we love Daniel Murphy, because Murphy hits behind him now, always gets up with guys on because everybody's trying to pitch around Harper. 378 WOBA, 218 ISO against right-handed pitching for him. Has a 384 batting average so far this year, so the guy is just pounding out hits. There's always guys on base when he's up, so he's been getting a lot of RBIs as well. I mean, really, really good spot here for Daniel Murphy. If you can afford to pay up at second base, he's one of my favorite options on almost a daily basis at this point. Next game we talk about, we got Tampa Bay at Arizona. Zach Greinke on the mound, and it's so tough for me with Greinke because his batting average against is 100 points higher on the road than it is when he's at home, and he's at home here today. So, there's always a chance that he could get lit up. He's been very tough on right-handed bats. Lefties have been the way to go after him. Left-handed bats usually aren't as good as they have been this year against him. I mean, they're hitting almost 300 against him. I think they have a 294 batting average this year, which is not his norm. You know, he usually is very tough on righties around the 200 batting average, and lefties hit like 220, 230 against him, you know, as a best-case scenario. This year, though, they've just kind of been teeing off on him, especially at home in Arizona. You know, the good thing is Tampa Bay does not have a lot of left-handed bats. The only guy they really have is Corey Dickerson. He's not hitting it all that well. He does have good numbers, 359 WOBA, 279 ISO since the start of last season. Half of that was done in Coors Field, though, so I take that number with a grain of salt, despite what other people try to argue that, you know, it's still who he is. You know, anybody who plays in Coors is going to have a little bit of an inflated number, so I still think he's got good power. But I wouldn't be looking for him to bang out a bunch of hits here today. And like we said, everybody else on this team is pretty much right-handed. So Greinke's been tough on the right-handed bats. I don't think this is a good spot at all for this Tampa Bay team. I also don't know if I really want to pay up top dollar for Greinke here today, though. So that's a decision that I'm going to be looking at Josh Kalachi's you know, on the bump article for rotocurve.com that he puts out every day, kind of get a little bit of a better idea of what he's looking at with the pitching, because like I said, I don't really see anybody that profiles well against Greinke, but I don't know if I want to pay up top dollar for him, because I don't know if he's going to be able to shut this team down and put in a big start for us. On the other side of this game, we got Matt Moore, left-handed pitcher. A couple guys that you want to attack with some of the right-handed bats, obviously. Paul Goldschmidt, great against lefties, 428 WOBA, 220 ISO. Beef Wellington Castillo, 372 WOBA, 283 ISO. I love this guy against left-handed pitching, especially at home. So I'm definitely going to have some shares of Beef tonight, and hopefully I'll be tweeting out a hashtag Beef at some point when he, you know, hits a home run and takes more yard. Also really like Yasmani Tomas, a guy that kind of goes under the radar. 370 WOBA, 233 ISO score for him. You know, another guy that's very good against left-handed pitching. So I think all three of those guys are in play. You can look at Segura on top of the lineup if you wanted to. You know, sometimes you get like a Brandon Drury or something like that hitting in the 2 spot. If you get that, I guess that's okay if you want to round out a stack. Moore is a decent pitcher, but he's not great. He's a young guy. I do think that they can get to him for a couple runs today, though. All right, next game, we got Atlanta against San Diego, two of the weaker offenses in the league against right-handed pitching. You know, Colin Rea on the mound for San Diego. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them, but there really are no right-handed bats on this Atlanta team. You know, the Braves are a bad lineup. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for anybody. I mean, other than Freddie Freeman, 366 WOBA, 215 ISO score, he's got the best numbers. He's the best hitter on the team, and I really don't like anybody outside of him here. Maybe you can look at a guy like Malik Smith, but I don't like the fact that they're hitting him in like the 7-hole or the 9-hole. He is a 377 WOBA, 232 ISO score against right-handed pitching. Good left-handed bat, good young left-handed bat with a lot of speed down there at the bottom of the order. But again, I just don't see the upside with using anybody here on this Atlanta team. On the other side of this game, we got Aaron Blair pitching. He's a rookie. Left-handed bats, he's a prospect, but left and right-handed bats are hitting over 300 against him this year. So he does look a little bit overmatched in the majors so far. Really are no lefties on San Diego, so we'd probably be looking at the right-handed bats who have still done okay against them. Guys like Kemp, guys like Myers, guys like Solarte. If you're going to use anybody, those would be the three I'd throw in there. But I really don't think this is a game I want to target a lot of bats in. Next game we have is Cleveland at Seattle. Wade Miley, the lefty on the mound for Seattle. A couple right-handed bats I think we can look at here on Cleveland. You know, Mike Napoli in a good spot, 389 WOBA, 273 ISO. Francisco Lindor, 381 WOBA, 177 ISO. You know, they're hitting 3 and 4 in the order. Both of those guys hit left-handed pitching well. I think both are in play. And you can even look at a guy like Rajai Davis up there on top of the order. He's been getting on base. He's been stealing some bases, scoring some runs. You know, had a couple home runs the other day. Has had a triple and a double recently. So he's giving you some extra base hits, scoring some runs. Like I said, he can get you a stolen base here or there too. Could be a decent option for pretty cheap if he's leading off again today. On the other side of the game, we got Cody Anderson, right and left-handed bats hitting over 333 against him this year. He's given up 10 home runs and 29 innings pitched, pretty evenly to right and left-handed bats. So, you know, I just really don't think this guy's a good pitcher, and I do think that Seattle's going to light him up. Robinson Cano, 369 WOBA, 215 ISO. Nelson Cruz, 371 WOBA, 226 ISO. Kyle Seager, 352 WOBA, 192 ISO. Those are the three guys that I want, guys that have a little bit of home run power, being that, you know, basically Anderson's giving up a home run better than every 3 innings so far this year. I think that you want to look at the guys that can take him yard, and those are the 3 guys that stand out to me, Cano, Cruz, and Seager. Next game we talk about Colorado against the LA Dodgers. Eddie Butler on the mound for Colorado, and he's not good. Left-handed bats have been better against them, but right-handed bats do okay too. I really like the younger Seager brother, 382 WOBA, 236 ISO, left-handed bat against the right-handed pitcher. Has 5 home runs in his last 4 games, had a 3 home run game, had a 2 home run game. Just been pounding out the hits lately, hitting up at the top of the order in the 2 spot for them. Getting on base, scoring runs, just looks every bit the stud that people said he was right now. So really like Seager, have no problem rolling him out there. Other than that, though, it kind of gets weak fast. I mean, you can use a guy like Adrian Gonzalez. You can use a guy like Jock Peterson if you want. But, I mean, these guys are kind of boom or bust to me. Yasmani Grandal, left-handed catcher, who should probably be starting today against the righty. I think he's somebody that's kind of in play. Pretty cheap, only down in like the low 3,000s on DraftKings. I think he's in the 2,000s on FanDuel. Probably the only other guy I'd look at there. On the other side, we got the rookie, Julio Urias, however you say his name. 2 starts this year. This kid was supposed to be some huge stud prospect. In his first 2 starts, he's been rudely welcomed to the league. Went 2.2 innings in 5 innings. Has given up 13 hits, 5 base on balls, and 8 runs in those 7.2 innings that he started already. So his ERA is 9. His WHIP is over 2. I mean, it has not been an easy road for him so far in the major leagues. Right-handed bat's really the way you want to attack him. So Nolan Arenado definitely in play for me. 343 WOBA, 220 ISO, just immense power that this guy has. Hits in the middle of that order, can get you some hits. Also like Travis Story, 374 WOBA, 279 ISO. Limited at bats against left-handed pitching, obviously, but again, another right-handed bat that's going to be in the middle of that order, does have some power upside and can pound out a couple hits for us. So that brings us to the last game, which is Boston at San Francisco. Rick Porcello's on the mound. He's been really good in 2016. I know this is a tough matchup, but he's been pretty even to both right and left-handed bats. The 2 guys that stand out a little bit to me, I like Joe Panik in this game. I like his price. I like the fact that he's at second base. And I also like Buster Posey here. If you look at this San Francisco lineup, San Francisco, not a very good hitter's ballpark, and Porcello's been good this year. There's not a single bat on this San Francisco team that's over like 3,900 today. So if you do think that Porcello is going to get lit up, you can stack these guys up for pretty cheap. Still go and pay up for some of the better pitching on the day and still have some money left over to go get like a big bat or 2 to throw in there with that stack. So it's not something that I'm recommending, definitely not for cash. If you wanted to take a shot in the tournament, I do like looking at teams where you can stack them up and everybody's cheap because it gives you a lot of money left over to build a solid roster around them. And Porcello has had a couple blow-ups, not this season. This season he's been great, but, in the past we've seen those games where he's given up 6 or 7 runs. So if you get one, you get these San Francisco guys that are pretty cheap at low ownership, and you're still able to put a couple big bats and big arms in there with them. That could be a way to get a pretty high score. On the other side of this game, we got Albert Suarez. Suarez is a relief pitcher who's being stretched out. I think this whole Boston offense is in play, except for the fact that this is not a very good hitter's park in San Francisco. But you look at the lefties like Ortiz and Shaw and Jackie Bradley Jr., you look at some of the righties up there towards the top of the order, guys like Mookie Betts, Dustin Pedroia, Xander Bogaerts, even Hanley Ramirez, although I like Ortiz a lot today, so I can't see myself using Ramirez, but it might make him a pretty decent swerve in tournaments because other people are probably going to have the same dilemma picking between one of those 2 first basemen. And for me, I think 95% of the people are just going to go and click on Ortiz's name because I think he's the better play. So you might be able to get Hanley at like 2% owned if you wanted. Like I said, not a great hitter's park, not something that I'm advising everybody to go out and do. The Boston bats are still pretty expensive. You're never going to be able to stack this team for cheap, but could be a viable option knowing that Suarez is probably only going to go like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 innings, and then we're going to get a bullpen game out of this. And that wraps it up for the Benny's Bats edition today. As you can see, they're doing some road work next to my house, so that's why you hear those big trucks in the background. And I'm also going to be leaving to go to Vegas, tomorrow morning. So I'm not going to be here Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday to do the Benny's Bats section. I fly back in late Sunday night, and I'll make sure I get something up Monday morning, Benny's Bats wise for you. But make sure you go over to rotocurve.com. Josh and the other contributors will have a lot of information up there. All the tools will be up over there. So, you guys can build your own lineups, getting all that information off the tools. I mean, that's basically what I use for the Benny's Bats section anyway. I go through those tools, I pick out the matchups and, kind of highlight them for you guys to make your to make your research go a little bit faster. This way you don't have to spend the 2 or 3 hours that we did looking at all this stuff. You can just watch the video and you get all the highlights that we saw in those 2 or 3 hours of research. So like I said, I'll be in Vegas for the next couple days, which also means because of Nevada, I can't play any DFS. So, probably won't be the best guy to ask any of those questions that you guys have to. I'll be doing a little sports betting, playing a little blackjack, and, watching my buddy get married. So you guys have a good one. I'll be back Monday. Signing off from RotoCurve. This is Benny Ricciardi, and stay classy, DFS.